Okay, you beautiful beings of YouTube, welcome to my channel, Tarot for today. We're going to focus on money, material matters, needs fulfillment, and wants fulfillment. I hope you're having a good day or an afternoon or evening whenever you see this. I'm going to have a look at where you're currently at in terms of your finances, financial health, financial value. We have a look at the energy points so that you can decide if this is your reading or not, and whether it resonates with what it is that you are trying to create when it comes to money. So for some of you, you are dealing with emotional upset and things didn't go to plan. Things have upset your emotional well-being. You're feeling sadness, grief, sort of withdrawal, isolation, moving away from the stability of the home base. And it's supported with the Ace of Wands, which is about new beginnings. It's a time where you are leaving the old behind and moving into something that is more heart aligned for you. But it's a matter of you going through this process before you can actually reach into the space of where it is that you're heading, because the person here in the card has got their back turned, and from this angle, it's something that's coming towards you, but you have to turn towards it in order to see it. And it's recognizing that you are going through this grieving process. You may have just started, so allow yourself to go through that process, but then you also might be one of those people that are nearing the end of it. You know, this person is actually looking at the spilt cups, looking at what was lost. And behind this character, there are two cups still standing. And it's important to recognize that even though there was some hardships, some loss, things didn't go as planned, it's about recognizing, well, what can I learn from it? What did go to plan? What did happen? I see the bridge here, which is standing out, so it's pretty much water under the bridge for some of your circumstances. And it might seem like a loss now, but really it's just clearing the way for something new and more heart aligned. It's making that space to actually hear it and allowing your system to let go. There's some of you who are in a situation where you're possibly in debt for the sake of having the nice home, having the perfect family. You may be in a situation where you're feeling a bit controlled by finances, and you know, the Six of Pentacles, this is someone who's actually quite generous in their light self, but in the shadow self it can be a form of control, financial control, deciding who gets what. You know, there's a saying, he who has the most money has the most power, or the most choices, or the most options. And it might be that you're desiring to upkeep this version of yourself with the best house and the best family and the best of the best, but it's coming at a cost of debt, emotionally, financially. And then we've got some of you here who are possibly in business and you're at a standstill financially. Things aren't flying as good, and you want some kind of quick fix or some kind of, you know, movement in this situation. How do you pivot from this? The Emperor is very much an energy or life force that is organized, is structured, is very clear about direction, but because there's stuff going on financially, you might find yourself being a little bit more impulsive and wanting to speed things up, and this is not the time to be doing that. It's actually time to slow down and reassess, but we'll get into that. If this resonates, then this is a reading for you, because we're going to go into that shortly. I'm noticing that there is some 4s, 6s, 5s, 1s, and we have the Knight. Numerologically, it's about creating stability, creating the right foundations, and moving through the challenges, not letting the emotions get the better of you, the stress, the worries, the fears, the panics, not letting them get the best of you through this time. It's easier said than done. And we've got the 6 of Swords at the bottom of the deck, which is generally about moving forward, moving out of rough waters into calmer waters. It's also about leaving behind conflict in the terms of the mentality, the mindsets. It might have been coming from a place of too many ideas and not enough movement, and this is sort of recognizing that, you know, it's not working, the situation is not working monetary wise. We've got 2 people who are kind of hiding, you know, they've got the cloak over them, so it's almost like a withdrawal, maybe too much withdrawals from a well that isn't exactly being replenished. So some boundaries need to be established, some reassessment of incoming and outgoings, looking at budget and looking at what is necessary to spend on what isn't. There's also the feeling of finding the right investors. You know, you need to have a reassessment of where it is you're going, having a bit more clarity around why you're doing what you're doing and where you want to go from here. And if it's the right vision and it's coming from the right place, then you can share that and actually get investors who will put the money into what it is that you're after, and they get paid, you get paid. It's win-win-win. We're looking at win-win-win options. You know, how can we move or pivot from this financial situation into a bit more abundance? Being honest with yourself, being aligned to the truth of the matter. Maybe there's been a little bit of overspending and giving too much power over to the wrong people for the wrong reasons. You know, both parties, if you're in a relationship, need to take into consideration the expenses that are kind of taking over the situation. There needs to be a lot of pullback on what's going on. We've got the 2 of Cups here in this circumstance, which is about generally lovers, 2 people coming together and working together towards harmony, the right gatherings of resources, right? But it's about love. It's bringing love into this particular situation, rather than rigidity and dogma or impulsiveness. It's about, what do we love here? What do we actually feel lightness around, juiciness around, joy around? Because this one feels a little bit too rigid in terms of the way that you've been approaching it, or approaching money. Let's just loosen up a little bit and come back to loving life. This one here, which was about debt, you know, having this beautiful life and fulfilling life, but it's coming at a cost. Overindulging, and you know, there's possibly money going out to other areas that people aren't aware of. You know, so there's expenditures going to outside the family home or outside the circumstances, and that needs to be taken into consideration. It could be gambling, it could be a third party, it could be you know, excessive app subscriptions. It could be spending too much money outside of the home, and it's coming at a cost of the illusions that is being created of, keeping up with the Joneses. So there needs to be a reassessment. And this one here is about intuition and connecting with your spiritual self, recognizing that not all is lost. It's recognizing that there is an abundance around you regardless of the situations that you find yourself in, because the situation that you found yourself in is personal. People go through similar experiences, but regardless of that experience, whether it exists or not, there is still abundance to be seen. And if people are probably trying to offer that to you and show that to you, but you're not in a state of receptivity right now. So it's just going back into your intuitive self, lifting up out of the circumstances that you're in and seeing it from a higher point of view. I'm going to bring in some oracle cards now, as we're looking at the subject of money. How do we get more money is usually the question. The reason we want more money is because we're lacking what we've got or haven't got. We want more, we're trying to serve a purpose with it, whether it's self-fulfillment or whether we're trying to impress someone, or or we're trying to create something for the greater good. And that's something for you to decide about where you're putting your energy, why you need the money in the first place. Our baseline is to look after our personal selves. We've got a roof over our head, we've got all the necessities that we need, and once you've established that, then what are you doing with the money? Then what are you doing with your life? For some of you, we're looking at an employment change in order to increase the funds or fund the lifestyle that you are chasing and wanting. It's looking at a different way of generating money and moving into something that's more aligned with your dreams and your passions and your life purpose. We're looking at nurturing that aspect of yourself, but it begins with, a pay rise or moving towards a different line of employment, and that brings you a bit more joy too. On this side, we've got people who need to pay themselves first, is the wording, but it's really recognizing that you've probably been giving so much out to too many different things at your expense. Like, where do you normally self-sacrifice? Where have you done that in the past? Where did you do that growing up? Where have you, especially when you're running a business, where do you always put yourself last? This is getting back into a state of love around money and what it's going to do for you. Love, not for the money itself, but what it gives you access to, the lifestyle that you want to create. And when you pay yourself first, it's saying invest in yourself. Some of you have to, if you're going into a career change, you need to maybe learn a new skill set. This is about investing in yourself so that you can elevate or move into a different direction. This is investing in yourself so that you can, if you go get a coach for a particular line of business, maybe you need more help with your marketing, maybe you need more help with your subconscious, whatever that is for you that is preventing you from getting the results you want. It's actually investing in yourself. So those who are working and exchanging time for money, it's looking at a different line of work, one that brings you closer to, your feelings of service and purpose and what lights you up. For those that are in business, we're looking at restructuring the model so that you're not a poor rich person. You're not exceeding your income. And that's a mindset game for those of you who do have quite a bit of money and, or a business that turns over quite a bit, but you're still feeling like you don't have enough because everything that you reinvest, you're left with very little. There needs to be a restructure in the way that you're doing things, and it starts with love, energy. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by starting with love? We start to fall into habits, and we start to fall into processes, and we start to fall into systems, and people like to tell us what we should or shouldn't be doing, but is that aligned with your heart? Does it light you up? Does it lead you to the outcome that you were looking for in the first place? There's many different ways to skin a cat. You want the one that's most efficient and aligned to how you operate as a person. If someone who is right-handed tries to teach a left-handed person how to do something, then there's going to be a little bit of a struggle because it's completely opposite side of the body. It's mirroring the other side of the body, and you can't teach someone something that you don't have the first-hand experience of doing yourself. Do you understand what I mean by that? If you're finding yourself a coach, make sure they are very similar. Well, first of all, they are walking the talk and they know how to get to where you're going. And second gate that you assess them with is, do you guys speak the same language? They might have the results, but the way in which you guys encode and decode information is very different. It's very hard to teach people who are claircognizant, clairvoyant techniques, because they're very different in the way that they encode and decode information. It's the same here when it comes to money and the structure and where you're coming from on the inside. Who has the power, you or everybody else? Well, it starts with you first, because how you feel about money is how you show up around money. Are you deserving of it? Can you receive? Some people are not in receipt. They're not open to it. They don't feel like they deserve. They've got 2 cups here behind them that is able to receive, but they've turned away. And then there's this situation is the person is controlling the money, whether it's the bank or, a parent or somebody who has more funds than you that you've been borrowing from. And then you've got this one here who's created their own business. So there's all different perspectives on how these people are showing up around the money situation. That comes back to your belief systems that you generated when you were growing up. As your family either had lots of money or they didn't have money, and their beliefs around people who did or didn't, it's the haves and have not. This can show up in so many different ways, and it's about you recognizing how it shows up for you. Looking at relationships to money, relationships about money, relationships of fair exchange. What do you need to know most? So we've got those on this side, which is all around the patterns, the systems, the processes, the way that money flows. Where is it getting locked up? And these are 2 people dancing, and they've got a mask on. So it's about what's behind the mask, and you're doing a dance with another person. You know, the business dances with their clients and customers. So if you're finding that there's stagnancy in the money flow, is probably a situation with a partner or a supplier or some kind of relationship that needs some relationship building, some damage control. Maybe you're head to head with somebody and it's preventing you from making progress. So that's just about getting back to what you love and why you love it, not just in a business sense but at a personal level. And we're seeing, you know, it could be a partnership within the business, within, you know, family ties. How is it showing up? How is the business reflecting an aspect of your life? Because when you can heal that, then you can heal the block, and once you remove the block, then things start to flow better again. So it's looking at those patterns, looking at the systems, looking at the structure, the model, the way things are done. It might be good for you because you're used to doing it this particular way now, but it's not working anymore. So we're restructuring it. On this side, this is more about, you know, negotiations. This is the agreements card. This is when you come together with someone or another company to make money. It's also about breaking bonds. You know, what you think you're worth. What do you think, you know, that particular role is paying? You know, it could pay more, it could pay less. Are you recognizing the current market, what value is out there for particular roles? Because this side was more about, you know, developing your skills, employment change, and making a negotiation with the new party. This one was more about support. Looking at supportive relationships. Some of you out there are giving way too much to people that aren't really appreciating it at this point in time. Whether it's emotional or financial, one of you is giving more financial, one of you is giving more emotional, and neither of you are really appreciating what the other's doing. You know, I'm seeing this external, this third party, there's like an external place that everybody's energy is kind of leaking to, and it needs to be reassessed, it needs to be brought back together. What I'm seeing here are the two hands. This is a bond, this is negotiation, this is coming together and agreeing. This one is actually reminding you to bring the love into this scenario. We're talking about money here, we're talking about flow, we're talking about the fact that money is an exchange of value. You're either giving up your time to get money so that you can do other things, or you're creating something that generates money for you. Either way, it's an exchange, and when you have something of value, you exchange it with people who are willing to pay for it. Okay, so it's breaking those family values around money, about it being bad or being good or being too much or too little. It's actually having no feeling towards it whatsoever, other than that it's, here's something of value, I'd like to exchange it for something of equal value. So start thinking in terms of what you're exchanging, not to put down other things that you might think are less valuable, but how it contributes to your overall lifestyle and where you'd like to be in your emotional set point, as well as your financial, you know, desires. If you want more money in your life, there's different ways of achieving that. It's anywhere from changing employment or starting up a business. but every situation has its limitations but also has its benefits. Not everybody is about money. Some people are more about the emotional value. They prefer the balance, the work-life balance. They prefer to have a little bit of money and a little bit of lifestyle. It doesn't need to be extravagant. So just decide which person you are. Just decide what you're okay with. You're a whole person. If you're living outside the family home, you are now responsible for whatever it is that you want. You don't even have to hold on to the patterns that you grew up with. Sometimes we're trying to harmonise and make these patterns continue to fit when they no longer are fitting, which is why you're here. And this is what we were speaking about with this one. This one's a bit more stagnant in terms of structure and models, the model that you're currently in. We've got the self-sabotage. So I feel like there's somebody or a couple, just people on the crew are no longer aligned to where the ship's going. So they're kind of holding back a bit or holding you back. There's a bit of self-sabotage. There's a bit of, maybe you've had enough of it and you need to acknowledge that. It's okay to just acknowledge that it's not going the way that you'd planned, and also that there might be people there that are no longer aligning to what it is that you want. I feel like some of you sense who that person might be, that they're holding this person back from moving forward. You might be holding yourself back. They look like people from the past. It might be a parent who's giving some kind of criticism to you, and it's playing out and you're not recognising it. I would recommend getting a coach for that, or a counsellor, just to dig around on that aspect for those that find that particular message resonates. On this side, we've got people who have inner child wounds. They need to connect to your inner child and nurture that kid and nurture what it is. Be the person that kid never had growing up. Be the person who would give everything to that kid through the adult life. You're allowed to do that. You're more than responsible and capable of doing that. And then for the people in the middle, it's, this is about asking help from above. This is about going outside of the normal circle to get yourself out of this funk, this debt, this living up to expectations, getting a completely new perspective around what it is. This is kind of ego driven. Some of you are quite intuitive, some of you are spiritually inclined, so it's a matter of having that right support, using your spirituality to support you in the right way, listening to your heart, not listening to external sources. Pulled some purpose cards out. What's the purpose of this experience that you're going through? This is about you connecting to your heart's desires. What is it that kid wanted growing up? This is you fulfilling your inner child's desires, making a commitment to that, breaking any vows that you've made growing up around money and growing up around, not deserving and putting the child last or your needs last and things. This is about you stepping forward and say, well, if I could have anything in the world, this is what I want. If all my fulfillment was given, I had all the money in the world, I had all the resources I need, I have the home, the car, everything that I really, really wanted, what would I do with myself after that? What would I do? What is it that I'd really love to experience before I die? Maybe that's how you want to look at it. What's on your bucket list? What happens if you won lotto? It's all around the same questioning. If you did win lotto, you got all the spending out the way, you got everything that you needed done, what would you do with your time? What would you do with yourself after that? And why aren't you doing it now on a smaller scale? You know, for me, it's painting. I always think if I got all the spending out the way, I would just want to paint all day and get higher quality materials. And then I ask myself, so what stops me from doing it now? You can go out and access cheaper materials, cheaper canvas, cheaper things, and still paint. Do you see what I'm saying? You can still do what your heart desires on a smaller scale. There's also other options out there for those who are needing to pivot. We're looking at considering other possibilities that are open to you. It could be strategic partnerships so that there's a wider net cast for a different audience that you wouldn't normally connect to. And then you've got those who are walking the path, and even though it might not feel like it, or you might have had an intuitive hit, you don't know why or how it's going to work, you just know that it's going to work. Keep going, keep moving forward, keep walking and elevating, bringing it all together. It's letting go of the patterns that are no longer serving you and connecting to your heart's desires. But it's also, this one stands out a lot, it's breaking old vows and bonds and agreements and contracts that you may have made when you were younger, to open up to some new, more aligned contracts for you. Allow yourself to daydream about the possibilities. Allow yourself to connect to the aspect of you that is beyond limitations, you know, and then you can work out the details of getting that in the first place. Sometimes we, you know, do all these meditation things and go on these retreats, and, you know, we get all magical, high and mighty, happy and free, and then we come home to our reality, our daily life, and it shuts down. And then, you know, all of a sudden, the only time we can reach that space is when we run away to another retreat or do something else. This is saying you don't need to do that. You can drift and daydream in the now for free. And then your mind, which is designed to get what the heart wants, will find a way. It looks at different options. You find evidence of why it will work. You know, it can find options of why it won't, but the reason you're here listening to this is because you want more. You want more, but you got to let go of some stuff in order to make space for more. But you've got to give yourself this time to experience what it's like to have that without the limitations. So then your heart and spirit can align to that. Your mind will find a way. It's designed to do that. Some of you got to go back to learning. You know, invest in yourself. Invest in your next level. What skills do you want? If you're looking to elevate out of a $40,000 a year salary and you want to jump to $60,000 a year, go and do some research. If you're in the $100,000 a year club and you want to get to $500,000, do some research. If you're, you know, jumping into the $1 million club, you want to be able to do some research and accept that there's going to be some fun stuff on the way there, and there's going to be stuff that you don't want to do but you have to. You know, it's studying and aligning yourself to people who are doing what you want to be doing. And if you don't have that skill set, then you hire someone who does. But it's reassessing your patterns around money. Stop thinking about the lack of it. You know, stop thinking about how much you don't have. You have control, you have the power to evaluate, not judge, but evaluate what's working, what's not. And you have to be honest with yourself about how much money is actually coming in versus how much money is going out. And what you actually want to create in your life. What do you want to invest in? Nobody can do it for you. In the end, we've got this one here, the Six of Pentacles, taking the power away or pretending. Pretending things are better than they are. I brought out the Angel Tarot, which we've got the Four of Fire and the Five of Water. And this is about desire. Fire is about our desires, what it is that we are passionate about. And then water is around our relationships and our emotions. They have to work together. But it's around who can help us or who can we help during that process. This is again, this is actually the Five of Cups. These two are the same. So it's about changing the way that you feel about things, changing your relationships, changing who you give your time and energy to, changing how you perceive going forward, allowing yourself to let go of what you thought life was going to be like, and then once you do that, you're open to more opportunities and different things. The Six of Cups, the one that follows on from this one, is about nostalgia and reminiscing, and also childhood, childlike dreams. It's also the love community. It's the card that represents like a soul companionship, a relationship, a loving one. However, we've got to go through the initiation of letting go of what no longer serves us anymore, and we move into something like the Four of Wands, which is contentment, peace, abundance, happy home life, a successful completion of a project. We're moving out here. These two cards belong into the same, because it's the Four of Pentacles, or Four of Wands, sorry. It's about that happiness. But it's not always defined by society or what our parents said we should be doing in order to have a successful life. It's how we feel on the inside. And it's sometimes when we go through this grieving process, realizing that other people told us, what we should do or how we should function or how we should act, it comes as a big hit to the heart. That we gave so much, we sacrificed ourselves, we abandoned ourselves for the sake of other people. And this is kind of asking you to pull back and go into what your heart desires. Reassessing where your heart actually lies if you didn't have all these limitations. If you didn't have the situation that you ended up in. We're not all out there ending up where we hoped we would. Sometimes we make choices unconsciously and we end up where we end up. And, you can appreciate your ability to have got there. But there's, that saying, you got yourself into the mess, you can get yourself out. But it's finding that right support too. You don't want people like rubbing salt in the wound and digging heels, and you don't need those kind of people. You don't need these people sabotaging it. So bringing out the angel cards here. There's books that you can access that allow you to, up level. If you can't afford any coaching packages or retreats or containers like that, there's people out there who write books and you can get an idea about it. There's libraries that contain millions of ideas if you just tune into what it is that you want. It is about letting go of bad habits. The person that you are becoming will have different habits to the person that you are today. Right? The person that has money thinks differently in terms of spending and investment than someone who of today is drowning in financial issues. But it's also the values. Like I said before, not everybody wants a whole lot of money. Not everybody wants to put in the work to get a whole lot of money. So it's defining what's important to you and letting go of that and allowing yourself to have a fresh slate, a clean slate, but tuning into what it is that your heart really wants. And then, this one's about looking at nature as inspiration, about cycles and the way things move in terms of like fluidity and liquidity. There's certain seasons that things happen, so maybe you're in a season, like you've got totally a whole lot of options to look at, restructuring and patterns and things like that, but you might be inspired by the way nature has its own structures and systems and the way that nature has certain seasons. So you might be in a down season where it's quiet and you can afford to reassess the way that the business is moving so that it is on the right path. I feel like the fairies card is also, because this is all around the lack mentality, what you don't have, but it's also asking you to recognise what you do have access to. Not everything requires a whole lot of money to get what you want. Some people can provide, like you might win a trip, or a friend might not be able to go on a trip, so they give it to you as a gift, right? This is different ways of receiving the money, but you have to be open to it and not closed off to different, it's showing up in a way that you didn't expect. I also want to talk about doing what comes natural to you. I think I said it earlier. We're talking about, the Emperor is very structured and can be quite rigid at times and stuck in the patterns. And there was a need to look at the remodeling of the business itself, but it's becoming more heart aligned, something a bit more authentic, rather than going to someone who has a completely different communication style to you, who's trying to teach you how to do it their way, and it's totally out of your reach, not because what they're sharing is not true, but it's just not something that you align with. Once you get this all sorted out, then money starts to flow a bit more easily because you're open to it. Again, this is a love card, and this is a timing card. We had the Two of Cups come out before, which I mentioned. It's all around love. This one normally talks about romance, or a new relationship coming through, and you might find that you connect to someone in which you are able to move the business forward if you're on this side, whereas this one's more about timing. Everything's in perfect time, everything's working out how it should be. You're not too late, or you're not too early, or you're not too whatever it is. Wherever you are right now is perfect time for you, because now is the time to make the changes. You can make the decision today. I'm only going to grieve for this long. I'm only going to have these habits for this long. Now I'm going to check in. I see a lot of heart, heart, and the inner child is the expression of who you were before you were conditioned in this lifetime. So you can call in a healer to help heal your beliefs around money. You can find yourself a money coach who guides you on understanding money at a spiritual level as well as a mental level and a physical level. It's about healing up all those things that are blocking the flow. All the habits that you might have that need to be let go of, because the person that you're becoming, or the person that has more money, thinks very differently, acts very differently to the way that you're doing it now. There's some things that probably are working for you, but you're asking to step and elevate step out of your current situation and level up into a new financial circle. Right, and it's not just a one and done thing. You need the right support to help you, depending on which angle you're coming from. You know, if it's lots of grief, or you're in lots of debt, or there's things not moving in the business, you know, whichever way it is for you, you get to make the decision that you'd like to move forward, not because you're struggling, not because there's lack, but because you want to step into more of who you are and love your life and love the way that life has panned out for you, because you've consciously made choices towards that, not just emotionally but financially, and it's balancing that out. If you'd like support with that, you're more than welcome to reach out. I can give you a personalised reading. I do one-to-one coaching and counselling around all matters of your life, whether it's money, whether it's love, whether it's work, whether it's health. If this is something that you'd like to go deeper with and have the correct support on, please reach out. I'm an artist, I'm a certified counsellor, and I'm a certified magnetic mind coach. I hope this has helped you, and I look forward to hearing how you're progressing. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.